Pretty storytelling. How are you doing today? We Hello, welcome to Everyday Storytelling. How are you doing today? We are going to be reading, what was it called again? 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which is basically impossible for a human. Unless you're like a walking fish. Na, 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 na.
Chasing a whale, one of those narwhals that the guy was talking about in his paper.
But before that, we are going to do the Bible. Daddy here as well.
Okay, stop moving.
And Daniel's joke of the day.
Okay, we're back to
And
the joke
Kim's
of the day.
gonna do the synopsis. And Kim's also gonna send out the links.
Howdy. So, Kim, have you sent the links yet? Okay, never mind. Don't answer that because I already know. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with the Bible, if I can find that. There it is. Nope, there it is. Okay. This is, thank you, Kimberly. Now no, it's fine. This is starting with, I lost it again, sorry. Starting with Genesis chapter 25. And as usual, here it is in the comments. And I think that, whoa, no, I don't want to do that. What did oh, there, okay. I think that somebody said that if they click on the link, then it takes me reading it away. So I apologize for that. That is probably something about your phone not playing Facebook while you're while you're on a different app. So sorry, I didn't write the software, but if you're able to, if you're not, then you can either pull out your Bible or just listen to me as I read it, because I'm going to do the best I can to read it word for word. Every once in a while I skip a word because that's the way I read, but you know, sorry about that. Okay, so this is the English Standard Version of the Bible, Genesis chapter 25. Abraham took another wife whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shurah. Jokshan fathered Sheba and Dedan. The sons of Dedan were Ashurim, Letushim, and Lumim. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldah. All these were the children of Keturah. Abraham gave all he had to Isaac, but to the sons of his concubines Abraham gave gifts, and while he was still living, he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward to the east country. Well, east, that's probably like Babylon, that's what I'm thinking. So just, you know, so you can get that in perspective. These are the days of the years of Abraham's life, 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, and was gathered to his people. Isaac and Ishmael, his sons, buried him in the cave of Machpelah in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite, east of Mamre, the field that Abraham purchased from the Hittites. There Abraham was buried with Sarah his wife. After the death of Abraham, God blessed Isaac his son, and Isaac settled at Beer Lahai Roi. These are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's servant, bore to Abraham. These are the names of the sons of Ishmael, named in the order of their birth: Nebaioth, the firstborn of Ishmael, and Kedar, Abdil, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema. These are all the sons of Ishmael, and these are their names by their villages and by their encampments, 12 princes according to their tribes. These are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. He breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people. They settled from Havilah to Shur, which is opposite Egypt in the direction of Assyria. He settled over against all his kinsmen. These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Aramean of Padan Aram, the sister of Laban the Aramean, to be his wife. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife because she was barren, and the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah his wife conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, "If it is thus, why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord, and the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other, the older shall serve the younger." When her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all his body like a hairy cloak, so they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel, so his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. When the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field, and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, "Let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted." Therefore his name was called Edom. Jacob said, "Sell me your birthright now." Esau said, "I'm about to die. Of what use is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me now." So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Now we're moving into chapter 26. Oh, I see we've got some comments now. Hi, Becca. Becca says hi. JJ says hi to Becca. Becca says hi back. Okay. Now we're in Genesis chapter 26. Now there was a famine in the land besides the former famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Gerar, to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, and the Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt, dwell in the land of which I shall tell you. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you, and will bless you. For to you and to your offspring I will give all these lands, and I will establish the oath that I swore to Abraham your father. I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven, and will give to your offspring all these lands. And in your offspring all the nations of the earth shall be blessed, because Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws." So Isaac settled in Gerar. When the men of the palace of the place asked about his wife, he said, "She is my sister," for he feared to say my wife, thinking lest the men of the place should kill me because of Rebekah, because she was attractive in appearance. When he had been there a long time, Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out of a window and saw Isaac laughing with Rebekah his wife. So Abimelech called Isaac and said, "Behold, she is your wife. How then could you say she is my sister?" Isaac said to him, "Because I thought lest I die because of her." Abimelech said, "What is this you have done to us? One of the people might easily have lain with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So Abimelech warned all the people, saying, "Whoever touches this man or his wife shall surely be put to death." And Isaac sowed in that land and reaped in the same year 100-fold. The Lord blessed him, and the man became rich and gained more and more until he became very wealthy. He had possessions of flocks and herds and many servants, so that the Philistines envied him. Now the Philistines had stopped and filled with earth all the wells that his father's servants had dug in the days of Abraham his father. And Abimelech said to Isaac, "Go away from us, for you are much mightier than we." So Isaac departed from them and encamped in the valley of Gerar and settled there. And Isaac dug again the wells of water that had been dug in the days of Abraham his father, which the Philistines had stopped after the death of Abraham, and he gave them the names that his father had given them. But when Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found that there a well of spring water, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, "The water is ours." So he called the name of the well Esek, because they contended with him. when they dug another well, and they quarreled over that also. So he called its name Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehoboth, saying, For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. From there he went to Beersheba, and the Lord appeared to him the same night and said, I am the God of Abraham your father. Fear not, for I am with you, and will bless you, and will multiply your offspring for my servant Abraham's sake. So he built an altar there, and called upon the name of the Lord, and pitched his tent there. And there Isaac's servants dug a well. When Abimelech went to him from Gerar with Ahuzoth, his advisor, and Phicol, the commander of his army, Isaac said to them, Why have you come to me, seeing that you hate me and have sent me away from you? They said, We see plainly that the Lord has been with you. So we said, Let there be a sworn pact between us, between you and us, and let us make a covenant with you, that you will do us no harm, just as we have not touched you, and have done to you nothing but good, and have sent you away in peace. You are now the blessed of the Lord. So he made them a feast, and they ate and drank. In the morning they rose early and exchanged oaths. And Isaac sent them on their way, and they departed from him in peace. That same day Isaac's servants came and told him about the well that they had dug, and said to him, We have found water. He called it Sheba. Therefore the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. When Esau was 40 years old, he took Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, to be his wife, and Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite, and they made life bitter. They made life bitter for Isaac and Rebekah. Yeah, I read better, and then I was like, no, they didn't make it better. It was not good. It wasn't a good time. They made life bitter. So that's down to the end of Genesis 26. And tomorrow we will pick up with Genesis 27. I know we're still a little bit behind. That's because we took a few days off in between the books that we're reading, and I didn't continue with the Bible time, but we will get it all caught up very soon. And we might just keep on reading 2 chapters, because obviously Genesis goes on way past 31. So we might just keep reading 2 chapters because it seems like it works. Anyway, without further ado, here is the joke of the day.
Okay, so what does a child who says, who says, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me?
Who says sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me? Obviously not somebody that lives in 2020. Okay, Kimberly is going to give us the synopsis about what we read yesterday. We began a new book, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It's about this dude that there's some stuff going on in the 1860s. Somebody asked me, actually it was JJ asked me just before we started this live stream, I haven't had a chance to look it up, when this book was written. I think it's in the 1880s, don't quote me, but, oh, okay, Daniel says it was him. Don't quote me on that. I think it was in the 1880s, but you can easily look that up with a Google search. And I challenge somebody to do that and put the comment down there in the comments. When was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea written? I think that they are chasing a whale, and that whale is going to go 20,000.
It's not a whale, it's a narwhal.
Okay, a narwhal, which is a type of whale, and they're going to be chasing that whale on the ship. Do you remember the name of the ship?
It was Abraham Lincoln.
The Abraham Lincoln. They're going to chase that narwhal for 20,000 leagues around
narwhal?
Around the world.
I always called it narwhal.
It's whatever. All right.
And they're also referred to as unicorns of the sea. But anyway,
and Aunt Kathy can't watch this video because I just said it's whatever, and that's forbidden.
Poke. So what happened was there was this thing that's been sinking ships, and everybody's like trying to find out what it is. There were conspiracy theories all over the place, and the main character thinks that it's a narwhal, a really, really big narwhal. You know the whale that has like a unicorn horn on it? It's that one. So they think it's a narwhal.
They're
And
like 5 or 6 times the size of a normal.
yeah. Like it must be ancient or
It
something.
must be just giant. Well, lizards
Right.
don't ever stop growing. That's why sometimes in Florida they find ginormous alligators when they're doing construction
Like bigger than my arms.
because they just don't stop growing.
So anyway, when they actually do go looking for it, it just goes, I'm out, goodbye. So when they start looking for it, it just disappears. And then a few weeks later or so, maybe it was a month, I don't know. But then there's another sighting, and the main character, he's like, hey, let's go look for it again.
Remember the main character's name?
No.
What? Mom says it's Bob. I don't think so.
Me
Do you
neither.
remember where he was working when all this started?
New York?
Not exactly.
He was
He
in New
went to
York.
New York, but where was he coming from? Remember he was doing some kind of research for 6 months in another state?
Right, but I forgot which one.
In Nebraska.
Okay.
And did he really like that place?
No.
Not too much. Okay. So here we are. Find the app, and right now we've got to find out who it is that says sticks and stones may break my bones. I need to. Okay, all right. I'll let you do.
So it says sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. A guy who's never been hit by a dang dictionary.
All right. So if you got hit by a dictionary, you might not say that. That's pretty funny. Okay, I've got to increase my size of my thing. My computer decided to restart overnight last night, so I had to reload everything, and I had the font just the way I liked it. It's on the view, Zoom. I will try that size. Okay. And then I have to do that. Yay. Okay. Now I can read it. Haha. Okay. Chapter 4, Ned Land. Ned. Captain Farragut. That's the name of the captain. Let me back up. He also, the guy also has a servant. I'm trying to see if we can figure out what his name is. Pierre Aronnax, I think, is the name of the narrator. So Pierre, we'll call him Pierre. All right, Captain Farragut was a good seaman. Remember, he was the captain of the Abraham Lincoln. Worthy of the frigate he commanded, his vessel and he were one. He was the soul of it. On the question of the monster, there was no doubt in his mind, and he would not allow the existence of the animal to be disputed on board. He believed in it as certain good women believe in the Leviathan, by faith, not by reason. The monster did exist, and he had sworn to rid the seas of it. Either Captain Farragut would kill the narwhale, or the narwhale would kill the captain. There was no third course. So this is sort of like a Moby Dick idea. Maybe we'll read that one later, not today. The officers on board shared the opinion of their chief. They were ever chatting, discussing, and calculating the various chances of a meeting, watching narrowly the vast surface of the ocean. More than one took up his quarters voluntarily in the cross trees who would have cursed such a birth under any other circumstances. As long as the sun described its daily course, the rigging was crowded with sailors whose feet were burnt to such an extent by the heat of the deck as to render it unbearable. Still, the Abraham Lincoln had not yet breasted the suspected waters of the Pacific. As to the ship's company, they desired nothing better than to meet the Unicorn, to harpoon it hoist it on board, and dispatch it. They watched the sea with eager attention. Keep in mind that if this narwhal is as big as they say it is, I don't think they can actually do that on this ship, but it is what it is. Yes, Kimberly? What? Kimberly thinks it's a giant squid. I don't think so, because squids aren't like solid. They don't have bones. Anyway, all right, more to follow. Besides, Captain Farragut had spoken of a certain sum of $2,000 set apart for whoever should first sight the monster, were he cabin boy, common seaman, or officer. I leave you to judge how eyes were used on board the Abraham Lincoln. For my own part, I was not behind the others, and left to no one my share of daily observations. The frigate might have been called the Argus for 100 reasons. Only one amongst us, Consul, seemed to protest by his indifference against the question which so interested us all, and seemed to be out of keeping with the general enthusiasm on board. I have said that Captain Farragut had carefully provided his ship with every apparatus for catching the gigantic cetacean. No whaler had ever been better armed. We possessed every known engine, from the harpoon thrown by the hand to the barbed arrows of the blunderbuss and the explosive balls of the duck gun. On the forecastle lay the perfection of a breech-loading gun, very thick at the breech and very narrow in the bore, the model of which had been in the exhibition of 1867. This precious weapon of American origin could throw with ease a conical projectile of 9 pounds to a mean distance of 10 miles. Thus, the Abraham Lincoln wanted for no means of destruction, and what was better still, she had on board Ned Land, the prince of harpooners. Ned Land was a Canadian with an uncommon quickness of hand, and who knew no equal in his dangerous occupation. Skill, coolness, audacity, and cunning he possessed in a superior degree, and it must be a cunning whale to escape the stroke of his harpoon. Ned Land was about 40 years of age. He was a tall man, more than 6 feet high, strongly built, grave and taciturn, occasionally violent, and very passionate when contradicted. His person attracted attention, but above all, the boldness of his look, which gave a singular expression to his face. Who calls himself Canadian, calls himself French, and little communicative as Ned Land was, I must admit that he took a certain liking for me. My nationality drew him to me, no doubt. It was an opportunity for him to talk, and for me to hear that old language of Rabelais, which is still in use in some Canadian provinces. Rabelais. Okay, I don't know who that is. The harpooner's family was originally from Quebec and was already a tribe of hardy fishermen when this town belonged to France. Little by little, Ned Land acquired a taste for chatting, and I loved to hear the recital of his adventures in the polar seas. He related his fishing and his combats with the natural poetry of expression. His recital took the form of an epic poem, and I seemed to be listening to a Canadian Homer singing the Iliad of the regions of the North. I am portraying this hardy companion as I really knew him. We are old friends now, united in that unchangeable friendship which is born and cemented amidst extreme dangers. Ah, brave Ned, I ask no more than to live 100 years longer, that I may have more time to dwell the longer on your memory. Now, what was Ned Land's opinion upon the question of the marine monster? I must admit that he did not believe in the unicorn, and was the only one on board who did not share that universal conviction. He even avoided the subject which I one day thought it my duty to press upon him. One magnificent evening, the 30th of July, that is to say, 3 weeks after our departure, the frigate was abreast of Cape Blanc, 30 miles to the leeward of the coast of Patagonia. We had crossed the Tropic of Capricorn, and the Straits of Magellan opened less than 700 miles to the south. Before 8 days were over, the Abraham Lincoln would be plowing the waters of the Pacific. Seated on the poop, Ned Land and I were chatting of one thing and another as we looked at this mysterious sea whose great depth had up to this time been inaccessible to the eye of man. I naturally led up the conversation to the giant unicorn and examined the various chances of success or failure of the expedition, but seeing that Ned Land let me speak without saying too much himself, I pressed him more closely. Well, Ned, said I, is it possible that you are not convinced of the existence of this cetacean that we are following? Have you any particular reason for being so incredulous? The harpooner looked at me fixedly for some moments before answering, struck his broad forehead with his hand, a habit of his, as if to collect himself, and said at last, Perhaps I have, Monsieur Aronnax. But Ned, you, a whaler by profession, familiarized with all the great marine mammalia, you ought to be the last to doubt under such circumstances. That is just what deceives you, Professor, replied Ned. As a whaler, I have followed many a cetacean, harpooned a great number, and killed several, but however strong or well armed they may have been, neither their tails nor their weapons would have been able to even scratch the iron plates of a steamer. But Ned, they tell of ships which the teeth of the narwhal have pierced through and through. Wooden ships? That is possible, replied the Canadian, but I have never seen it done, and until further proof I deny that whales, cetaceans, or sea unicorns could ever produce the effect you describe. Well, Ned, I repeat it with a conviction resting on the logic of facts. I believe in the existence of a mammal, power fully organized, belonging to the branch of vertebrata, like the whales, the cachalots, or the dolphins, and furnished with the horn of defense of great penetrating power. Remember that Monsieur Aronnax is saying this on the logic of facts. He is with the scientific community here, which has confirmed that this must be a giant whale, probably a narwhal. Hum, said the harpooner, shaking his head with the air of a man who would not be convinced. Notice one thing, my worthy Canadian, I resumed. If such an animal is in existence, if it inhabits the depths of the ocean, if it frequents the strata lying miles below the surface of the water, it must necessarily possess an organization the strength of which would defy all comparison. And why this powerful organization? Demanded Ned. Because it requires incalculable strength to keep oneself in these strata and resist their pressure. Listen to me. Let us admit that the pressure of the atmosphere is represented by the weight of a column of water 32 feet high. In reality, the column of water would be shorter, as we are speaking of seawater, the density of which is greater than that of fresh water. Very well. When you dive, Ned, as many as 32 feet of water as there are above you, so many times does your body bear a pressure equal to that of the atmosphere, that is to say, 15 pounds for every square inch of its surface. It follows then that at 320 feet, this pressure equals that of 10 atmospheres, of 100 atmospheres at 3,200 feet, and of 1,000 atmospheres at 32,000 feet. That is about 6 miles, which is equivalent to saying that if you could attain this depth in the ocean, each square 3/8 of an inch of the surface of your body would bear the pressure of 5,600 pounds. Ah, my brave Ned, do you know how many square inches you carry on the surface of your body? I have no idea, Monsieur Aronnax. About 6,500, and as in reality the atmospheric pressure is about 15 pounds to the square inch, your 6,500 square inches bear at this moment a pressure of 97,500 pounds. Without perceiving it? Without your perceiving it. And if you are not crushed by such a pressure, it is because the air penetrates the interior of your body with equal pressure. Hence, perfect equilibrium between the interior and exterior pressure, which thus neutralize each other and which allows you to bear it without inconvenience. But in the water, it is another thing. You didn't know you were going to have a science lesson, did you? Ha. Yes, I understand, replied Ned, becoming more attentive. Because the water surrounds me, but does not penetrate me. Precisely, Ned, so that at 32 feet beneath the surface of the sea, you would undergo a pressure of 92,000 pounds. At 320 feet, 10 times that pressure. At 3,200 feet, 100 times that pressure. Lastly, at 32,000 feet, 1,000 times that pressure would be 92,500,000 pounds. That is to say that you would be flattened as if you had been drawn from the plates of a hydraulic machine. The devil! Exclaimed Ned. Very well, my worthy harpooner. If some vertebrate, several hundred yards long and large in proportion, can maintain itself in such depths of those whose surface is represented by millions of square inches, that is, by tens of millions of pounds, we must estimate the pressure they undergo. Consider then what must be the resistance of their bony structure and the strength of their organization to withstand such pressure. Why, exclaimed Ned Land, they must be made of iron plates, 8 inches thick, like the armored frigates. As you say, Ned, and think what destruction such a mass would cause if hurled with the speed of an express train against the hull of a vessel. Yes, certainly, perhaps, replied the Canadian, shaken by these figures, but not yet willing to give in. Well, have I convinced you? You have convinced me of one thing, sir, which is to say, if such animals do exist at the bottom of the seas, they must necessarily be as strong as you say. But if they do not exist, mine obstinate harpooner, how explain the accident to the Scotia? Chapter 5, At a Venture. Obviously, they do exist, and Mr. Aronnax is with the scientific community in supporting that based on the facts at hand. Chapter 5, At a Venture. The voyage of the Abraham Lincoln was for a long time marked by no special incident, but one circumstance happened which showed the wonderful dexterity of Ned Land and proved what confidence we might place in him. On the 30th of June, the frigate spoke some American whalers, from whom we learned that we knew nothing about the Narwhal. But one of them, the captain of the Monroe, knowing that Ned Land had shipped on board the Abraham Lincoln, begged for his help in chasing a whale they had in sight. Commander Farragut, desirous of seeing Ned Land at work, gave him permission to go on board the Monroe. Fate served our Canadian so well that instead of one whale, he harpooned 2 with a double blow, striking one straight to the heart and catching the other after some minutes' pursuit. Decidedly, if the monster had ever had to deal with Ned Land's harpoon, I would not bet in its favor. The frigate skirted the southeast coast of America with great rapidity. The 3rd of July, we were at the opening of the Straits of Magellan, level with Cape Viragus, but Commander Farragut would not take a tortuous passage, but doubled Cape Horn. And I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. Viragus. If you know how to pronounce it, then please let me know. The ship's crew agreed with him, and certainly it was possible that they might meet the Narwhal in this narrow pass. Many of the sailors affirmed that the monster could not pass there, that he was too big for that. The 6th of July, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the Abraham Lincoln, at 15 miles to the south, doubled the solitary island, this lost rock at the extremity of the American continent, to which some Dutch sailors gave the name of their native town, Cape Horn. The course was taken toward the northwest, and the next day the screw of the frigate was at last beating the waters of the Pacific. "Keep your eyes open," called out the sailors, and they were opened widely, both eyes and glasses, a little dazzled, it is true, by the prospect of $2,000, had not an instant's repose. I myself, for whom money had no charms, was not the least attentive on board, giving but few minutes to my meals, but a few hours to sleep. Indifferent to either rain or sunshine, I did not leave the poop of the vessel, now leaning on the netting of the forecastle, now on the taffrail. I devoured with eagerness the the soft foam which whitened the sea as far as the eye could reach, and how often have I shared the emotion of the majority of the crew, when some capricious whale raised its black back above the waves. The poop of the vessel was crowded on a moment. The cabins poured forth a torrent of sailors and officers, each with heaving breast and troubled eye watching the course of the cetacean. I looked and looked till I was nearly blind, whilst Consul kept repeating in a calm voice, "If, sir, you would not squint so much, you would see better." But vain excitement. The Abraham Lincoln checked its speed and made for the animal signaled, a simple whale, a common cachalot, which soon disappeared amidst a storm of abuse. But the weather was good. The voyage was being accomplished under the most favorable auspices. It was then the bad season in Australia, the July of that zone corresponding to our January in Europe, but the sea was beautiful and easily scanned round a vast circumference. The 20th of July, the Tropic of Capricorn was cut by the 105th of longitude, and the 27th of the same month we crossed the equator on the 110th meridian. This passed, the frigate took a more decided westerly direction and scoured the central waters of the Pacific. Commander Farragut thought, and with reason, that it was better to remain in deep water and keep clear of continents or islands, which the beast itself seemed to shun, perhaps because there was not enough water for him to test the greater part of the crew. The frigate passed at some distance from the Marquesas and the Sandwich Islands, crossed the Tropic of Cancer, and made for the China Seas. We were on the theater of the last diversions of the monster, and to say the truth, we no longer lived on board. The entire ship's crew were undergoing a nervous excitement of which I can give no idea. They could not eat, they could not sleep. 20 times a day, misconception or an optical illusion of some sailor seated on the taffrail would cause dreadful perspirations, and these emotions, 20 times repeated, kept us in a state of excitement so violent that a reaction was unavoidable. Remember, $2,000 was a lot more money than it is now in 1867. And truly, reaction soon showed itself. I just want to point that out, because right now, a $20 gold piece, if you had a coin that sold that was $20, that was minted in 1867, back when America was on the gold standard, today that same gold coin is worth about $2,000. So that's how much more $2,000 was then than it is now. Anyway, yeah, Daniel just said a lot more than $2,000. All right. Mom's got Swirling Circle of Doom. If you have Swirling Circle of Doom, then you probably can't hear me, but if it's better, then let me know in the comments. All right, and truly, reaction soon showed itself. For 3 months, during which a day seemed an age, the Abraham Lincoln furrowed all the waters of the northern Pacific, running at whales, making sharp deviations from her course, veering suddenly from one tack to another, stopping suddenly, putting on steam, and backing ever and anon at the risk of deranging her machinery, and not one point of the Japanese or American coast was left unexplored. The warmest partisans of the enterprise now became its most ardent detractors. Reaction mounted from the crew to the captain himself, and certainly had it not been for the resolute determination on the part of Captain Farragut, the frigate would have headed due southward. This useless search could not last much longer. The Abraham Lincoln had nothing to reproach herself with. She had done her best to succeed. Never had an American ship's crew shown more zeal or patience. Its failure could not be placed to their charge. There remained nothing but to return. This was represented to the commander. The sailors could not hide their discontent, and the service suffered. I will not say there was a mutiny on board, but after a reasonable period of obstinacy, Captain Farragut, as Columbus did, asked for 3 days' patience. Rebecca says she's good, she's just behind. If in 3 days the monster did not appear, the man at the helm should give 3 turns of the wheel, and the Abraham Lincoln would make for the European seas. This promise was made on the 2nd of November. Remember, when did they leave? Like early July? So they've been out at sea for a while. It had the effect of rallying the ship's crew. The ocean was watched with renewed attention. Each one wished for a last glance in which to sum up his remembrance. Glasses were used with feverish activity. It was a grand defiance given to the giant narwhal, and he could scarcely fail to answer the summons and appear. 2 days passed. The steam was at half pressure. At 1,000 schemes were tried to attract the attention and stimulate the apathy of the animal in case it should be met in those parts. Large quantities of bacon were trailed in the wake of the ship, to the great satisfaction, I must say, of the sharks. Small craft radiated in all directions round the Abraham Lincoln as she lay to and did not leave a spot of the sea unexplored. But the night of the 4th of November, remember that's election day, the 4th of November, so be sure to vote. Not in 1867, I'm talking about 2020. But the night of the 4th of November arrived without the unveiling of this submarine mystery. The next day, the 5th of November at 12, the delay would, morally speaking, expire. After that time, Commander Farragut, faithful to his promise, was to turn the course to the southeast and abandon forever the northern regions of the Pacific. The frigate was then at 31 degrees 15 minutes north latitude and 136 degrees 42 minutes east longitude. I would love it if somebody looked up all of these positions on the globe so we knew where they were. You like do little pin map with string, that'd be awesome. The coast of Japan still remained less than 200 miles to leeward. Night was approaching. They had just struck 8 bells. Large clouds veiled the face of the moon. Then, in its first quarter, the sea undulated peaceably under the stern of the vessel. At that moment, I was leaning forward on the starboard netting. Consul, standing near me, was looking straight before him. The crew, perched in the ratlines, examined the horizon, which contracted and darkened by degrees. Officers with their night glasses scoured the growing darkness. Sometimes the ocean sparkled under the rays of the moon, which darted between 2 clouds, then all trace of light was lost in the darkness. In looking at Consul, I could see he was undergoing a little of the general influence. At least I thought so. Perhaps for the first time his nerves vibrated to a sentiment of curiosity. Come, Consul, said I, this is the last chance of pocketing the $2,000. May I be permitted to say, sir, replied Consul, that I never reckoned on getting the prize, and had the government of the Union offered $100,000, it would have been none the poorer. In other words, he's not going to take the prize. You're right, Consul. It is a foolish affair after all, and one upon which we entered too lightly. What time lost, what useless emotions. We should have been back in France 6 months ago. In your little room, sir, replied Consul, and in your museum, sir, and I should have already classed all your fossils, sir, and the Babirusa would have been installed in its cage in the Jardin des Plantes, and have drawn all the curious people of the capital. As you say, Consul, I fancy we shall run a fair chance of being laughed at for our pains. That's tolerably certain, replied Consul quietly. I think they will make fun of you, sir, and must I say it? Go on, my friend. Well, sir, you will only get your deserts, indeed. When one has the honor of being a savant as you are, sir, one should not expose oneself to... Consul had not time to finish his compliment. In the midst of general silence, a voice had just been heard. It was the voice of Ned Land shouting, "Look out there! The very thing we're looking for on our weather beam!" Chapter 6, At Full Steam. And let me know in the comments whether or not we should continue. Daniel says we should. Daniel, JJ is up. Kimmy's probably asleep now. I know this story's putting her to sleep. She says, am not. All right, so here we are, chapter 6 at full steam. They finally, Ned Land spotted that narwhal. Here we go. At this cry, the whole ship's crew hurried toward the harpooner. Commander, officers, masters, sailors, cabin boys, even the engineers left their engines and the stokers their furnaces. The order to stop her had been given, and the frigate now simply went on by her own momentum. The darkness was then profound, and however good the Canadian's eyes were, I asked myself how he had managed to see, and what he had been able to see. My heart beat as if it would break, but Ned Land was not mistaken, and we all perceived the object he pointed to. At 2 cables' lengths from the Abraham Lincoln, on the starboard quarter, the sea seemed to be illuminated all over. It was not a mere phosphoric phenomenon. The monster emerged some fathoms from the water, and then threw out that very intense but mysterious light mentioned in the report of several captains. This magnificent irradiation must have been produced by an agent of great shining power. The luminous part traced on the sea an immense oval, much elongated, the center of which condensed a burning heat whose overpowering brilliancy died out by successive gradations. It is only a massing of phosphorescent particles. Phosphoric particles, cried one of the officers. No, certainly not, sir, I replied. That brightness is of an essentially electrical nature. Besides, see, it moves. It is moving forwards, backwards. It's darting towards us. A general cry arose from the frigate. Silence, said the captain. Up with the helm, reverse the engines. Steam was shut off, and the Abraham Lincoln, beating to port, described a semicircle. Right the helm, go ahead, cried the captain. These orders were executed, and the frigate moved rapidly from the burning light. I was mistaken. She tried to sheer off, but the supernatural animal approached with a velocity double her own. We gasped for breath. Stupefaction, more than fear, made us dumb and motionless. The animal gained on us, sporting with the waves. It made the round of the frigate, which was then making 14 knots, and enveloped it with its electric rings like luminous dust. Then it moved away 2 or 3 miles, leaving a phosphorescent track, like those volumes of steam that the express trains leave behind. All at once, from the dark line of the horizon, whither it retired to gain its momentum, the monster rushed suddenly towards the Abraham Lincoln with alarming rapidity, stopping suddenly about 20 feet from the hull, and died out, not diving under the water, for its brilliancy did not abate, but suddenly, and as if the source of this brilliant emanation was exhausted. Then it reappeared on the other side of the vessel, as if it had turned and slid under the hull. At any moment a collision might have occurred which would have been fatal to us. However, I was astonished at the maneuvers of the frigate. She fled and did not tack. On the captain's face, generally so impassive, was an expression of unaccountable astonishment. Monsieur Aronnax, he said, I do not know with what formidable being I have to deal, and I will not imprudently risk my frigate in the midst of this darkness. Besides, how attack this unknown thing? How defend oneself from it? Wait for daylight, and the scene will change. You have no further doubt, Captain, of the nature of the animal? No, sir, it is evidently a gigantic narwhal, and an electric one. Perhaps, added I, one can only approach it with a torpedo. Undoubtedly, replied the captain. If it possesses such dreadful power, it is the most terrible animal that was ever created. That is why, sir, I must be on my guard. The crew were on their feet all night. No one thought of sleep. The Abraham Lincoln, not being able to struggle with such velocity, had moderated its pace and sailed at half speed. For its part, the narwhal, imitating the frigate, let the waves rock it at will, and seemed decided not to leave the scene of the struggle. Towards midnight, however, it disappeared, or, to use a more appropriate term, it died out like a large glowworm. Had it fled? One could only fear, not hope it. But at 7 minutes to 1 o'clock in the morning, a deafening whistle was heard, like that produced by a body of water rushing with great violence. The captain, Ned Land, and I were then on the poop, eagerly peering through the profound darkness. "Ned Land," asked the commander, "you have often heard the roaring of whales?" "Often, sir, but never such whales the sight of which brought me in $2,000. If I can only approach within four harpoons' length of it." "But to approach it," said the commander, "I ought to put a whaler at your disposal." "Certainly, sir." "That will be a trifling with the lives of my men." "And mine too," simply said the harpooner. Towards 2 o'clock in the morning, the burning light reappeared, not less intense, about 5 miles to windward of the Abraham Lincoln. Notwithstanding the distance and the noise of the wind and the sea, one heard distinctly the loud strokes of the animal's tail, and even its panting breath. It seemed that, at the moment, that the enormous narwhale had come to take breath at the surface of the water. The air was engulfed in its lungs, like the steam in the vast cylinders of a machine of 2,000 horsepower. Thought I, a whale with the strength of a cavalry regiment would be a pretty whale. We were on the qui-vive till daylight. Qui-vive. Okay, that's the qui-vive. It's like the edge of our seats kind of thing. And prepared for the combat. The fishing implements were laid along the hammock netting. The second lieutenant loaded the blunderbusses, which could throw harpoons to the distance of a mile, and long duck guns with explosive bullets, which inflicted mortal wounds even to the most terrible animals. Ned Land contented himself with sharpening his harpoon, a terrible weapon in his hands. At 6 o'clock, day began to break, and with the first glimmer of light, the electric light of the narwhale disappeared. At 7 o'clock, the day was sufficiently advanced, but a very thick sea fog obscured our view, and the best spy glasses could not pierce it. That caused disappointment and anger. I climbed the mizzenmast. Some officers were already perched on the mastheads. At 8 o'clock, the fog lay heavily on the waves, and its thick scrolls rose little by little. The horizon grew wider and clearer at the same time. Suddenly, just as on the day before, Ned Land's voice was heard. "The thing itself on the port quarter!" called the harpooner. Every eye was turned toward the point indicated. There, a mile and a half from the frigate, a long blackish body emerged a yard above the waves. Its tail, violently agitated, produced a considerable eddy. Never did a tail beat the sea with such violence. An immense track of dazzling whiteness marked the passage of the animal and described a long curve. The frigate approached the cetacean. I examined it thoroughly. The reports of the Shannon and the Helvetia had rather exaggerated its size, and I estimated its length at only 250 feet, and to its dimensions I could only conjecture them to be admirably proportioned. While I watched this phenomenon, 2 jets of steam and water were ejected from its vents and rose to the height of 120 feet. Thus I ascertained its way of breathing. I concluded definitely that it belonged to the vertebrate branch class Mammalia. The crew waited impatiently for their chief's orders. The latter, after having observed the animal attentively, called the engineer. The engineer ran to him. "Sir," said the commander, "you have steam up?" "Yes, sir," answered the engineer. "We'll make up your fires and put on all steam." 3 hurrahs greeted this order. The time for the struggle had arrived. Some moments after, the 2 funnels of the frigate vomited torrents of black smoke, and the bridge quaked under the trembling of the boilers. The Abraham Lincoln, propelled by her wonderful screw, went straight at the animal. The latter allowed it to come within half a cable's length. Then, as if disdaining to dive, it took a little turn and stopped a short distance off. This pursuit lasted nearly 3/4 of an hour without the frigate gaining 2 yards on the cetacean. It was quite evident that at this rate we should never come up with it. "Well, Mr. Land," asked the captain, "do you advise me to put the boats out to sea?" "No, sir," replied Ned Land, "because we shall not take that beast easily." "What shall we do, then?" "Put on more steam if you can, sir. With your leave, I mean to post myself under the bowsprit and the bowsprit, and if we get within harpooning distance, I shall throw my harpoon." "Go, Ned," said the captain. "Engineer, put on more pressure." Ned Land went to his post. The fires were increased, the screw revolved 43 times a minute, and the steam poured out of the valves. We heaved the log and calculated that the Abraham Lincoln was going at the rate of 18½ miles an hour. But the accursed animal swam at the same speed. For a whole hour the frigate kept up this pace without gaining 6 feet. It was humiliating for one of the swiftest sailors in the American Navy. A stubborn anger seized the crew. The sailors abused the monster who, as before, disdained to answer them. The captain no longer contented himself with twisting his beard. He gnawed at it. The engineer was called again. "You have turned full steam on?" "Yes, sir," replied the engineer. The steam of the Abraham Lincoln increased. Its masts trembled down to their stepping holes, and the clouds of smoke could hardly find way out of the narrow funnels. They heaved the log a second time. "Well?" asked the captain at the man of the wheel. 19 miles and 3/10, sir." "Clap on more steam." The engineer obeyed. The manometer showed 10 degrees, but the cetacean grew warm itself, no doubt, for without straining itself, it made 19 3/10 miles. What a pursuit! No, I cannot describe the emotion that vibrated through me. Ned Land kept his post, harpoon in hand. Several times the animal let us gain upon it. "We shall catch it! We shall catch it!" cried the Canadian. But just as he was going to strike, the cetacean stole away with a rapidity that could not be estimated at less than 30 miles an hour. And even during our maximum of speed, it bullied the frigate, going round and round it. A cry of fury broke from everyone. At noon, we were no further advanced than at 8 o'clock in the morning. The captain then decided to take more direct means. "Ah," he said, "that animal goes quicker than the Abraham Lincoln. Very well, we will see whether it will escape these conical bullets. Send your men to the forecastle, sir." The forecastle gun was immediately loaded and slewed around, but the shot passed some feet above the cetacean, which was half a mile off. "Another more to the right," cried the commander, "and $5, whoever will hit that infernal beast." An old gunner with a gray beard that I can see now with steady eye and grave face went up to the gun and took a long aim. A loud report was heard, with which were mingled the cheers of the crew. The bullet did its work. It hit the animal, and sliding off the rounded surface, was lost in 2 miles depth of sea. The chase began again, and the captain, leaning towards me, said, "I will pursue that beast till my frigate bursts up." "Yes," answered I, "and you will be quite right to do it. I wish the beast would exhaust itself and not be insensible to fatigue like a steam engine. But it was no use. Hours passed without it showing any signs of exhaustion. However, it must be said in praise of the Abraham Lincoln that she struggled on indefatigably. She struggled on without getting tired. I cannot reckon the distance she made, under 300 miles during this unlucky day, November the 6th. But night came on and overshadowed the rough ocean. Now I thought our expedition was at an end, and that we should never again see the extraordinary animal. I was mistaken. At 10 minutes to 11 in the morning, the electric light reappeared 3 miles to windward of the frigate, as pure, as intense as during the preceding night. The narwhal seemed motionless, perhaps tired with its day's work. It slept, letting itself float with the undulation of the waves. Now was a chance of which the captain resolved to take advantage. He gave his orders. The Abraham Lincoln kept up half steam and advanced cautiously so as not to awaken its adversary. It is no rare thing to meet in the middle of the ocean whales so sound asleep that they can be successfully attacked. And Ned Land had harpooned more than one during its sleep. The Canadian went to take his place again under the bowsprit. The frigate approached noiselessly, stopped at 2 cables' length from the animal, and following its track, no one breathed. A deep silence reigned on the bridge. We were not 100 feet from the burning focus, the light of which increased and dazzled our eyes. At this moment, leaning on the forecastle bulwark, I saw below me Ned Land grappling the martingale in one hand, brandishing his terrible harpoon in the other, scarcely 20 feet from the motionless animal. Suddenly his arm straightened, and the harpoon was thrown. I heard the sonorous strike of the weapon, which seemed to have struck a hard body. The electric light went out suddenly, and 2 enormous waterspouts broke over the bridge of the frigate, rushing like a torrent from stem to stern, overthrowing men and breaking the lashings of the spars. A fearful shock followed, and, thrown over the rail without having time to stop myself, I fell into the sea. And that is where we must stop for this evening. Chapter 7 tomorrow will be an unknown species of whale, and the first word is this. So I hope that you enjoyed heavy storytelling this evening. I hope that the race isn't too much stress for everybody getting through. I think Kimberly has something to show us now. And we haven't forgotten about the, oh wow, that is so nice, Kimberly. We have not forgotten about the special thing that we're going to do, which is going to consist of making a ship's window so that we can put it right here, window for a ship, and that'll be nice. So anyway, I hope that you come back tomorrow, and this has been, I hope you enjoy Heavy D Storytelling and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. God bless you.